They say the woods have eyes. Mine had footprints, barefoot, in the dead of winter. It was January 2021, and my partner, Alex, and I had just bought our first house, an old fixer-upper on the edge of the vast Green Mountain National Forest in Vermont. It was our dream: isolation, towering pines, and absolute silence, bordered on two sides by seemingly endless wilderness. The house itself needed work, but the location was perfect. We spent that first winter renovating, enjoying the solitude. One morning, after a fresh snowfall, I went out to grab firewood from the woodshed. That's when I saw them. A single line of footprints leading out from the dense tree line, crossing our snowy yard, going directly to the driver's side door of my truck parked in the driveway, and then leading straight back into the woods. My blood ran cold. They weren't boot prints. They looked distinctly, impossibly, like bare feet. Who in their right mind would be walking barefoot in sub-zero temperatures? I checked around the house. No other prints, nothing near the windows or doors. Just that bizarre, direct path to my truck and back. Alex thought it might be some strange animal track distorted by the snow, but I knew what I saw. Life went on. The snow melted, and we almost forgot about it. Until the next winter. January 2022. A heavy blizzard hit, burying us in 2 feet of powder. The morning after, I stepped outside, and my stomach dropped. Footprints. Everywhere. Circling the house, leading up to every window, crisscrossing the yard. Dozens of overlapping barefoot tracks in the deep snow. It looked like a small army had been scouting our property all night. Panic set in. I grabbed my hunting rifle, checked the perimeter. Nothing. Just the chilling evidence. We called the sheriff, but without any sign of forced entry or actual crime, all they could do was file a trespassing report and tell us to be careful. That night, we couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. Around 3 a.m., huddled in our bedroom, we heard it. A soft, rhythmic thump against the outside wall downstairs. Then another, and another. Someone was methodically circling the house, knocking or bumping against the walls as they went. Alex wanted to call the police again, but I knew it was useless. I grabbed my rifle and a powerful flashlight. "Stay here," I whispered. "Lock the door." I crept downstairs into the pitch-black living room. The thumping was closer now, just outside the large picture window. I took a deep breath, flicked off the safety on my rifle, and simultaneously switched on the flashlight, aiming it directly through the window. For a split second, I saw them. 2 figures, pale and gaunt, completely naked despite the freezing cold, their faces turned towards the light. They weren't human. Not quite. Their limbs were too long, their eyes too large and dark. They looked like something ancient and starved. The moment the light hit them, they recoiled, shielding their eyes, and then scrambled back into the darkness of the woods with an unnatural, skittering speed. I stood there, shaking. The image burned into my mind. We sold the house that spring. We never saw the figures again. Never found any explanation. Were they feral humans? Some local legend I'd never heard of? Or something else entirely, drawn out of the deep woods by the scent of civilization? All I know is that they left barefoot tracks in the snow, circled our house in the dead of night, and looked at me with eyes that didn't belong to anything natural. The woods aren't empty. They're just very, very patient.
Out on the John Muir Trail, the only thing worse than realizing you're lost is realizing someone wants you to be. Last October, I set out to hike a challenging solo section of the John Muir Trail in California's Sierra Nevada. I'm an experienced backpacker, always meticulous about my gear and my route. This trip involved relying on pre-placed food caches, sealed buckets I'd hiked in and buried weeks earlier at specific GPS coordinates filled with enough supplies to get me through the next leg. My first week went exactly as planned. The granite peaks were breathtaking, the solitude was invigorating, and my first cache was right where I left it. Everything changed on day 8. I arrived at the coordinates for my second cache, a remote spot miles off the main JMT, hidden beneath a distinctive cluster of rocks. The ground was disturbed. My bucket was gone. Not dragged away by an animal, the hole was too neat. It was dug up, cleanly removed. My heart pounded. That cache held 4 days' worth of food. Without it, I was dangerously low on supplies, stranded between resupply points. Panic started to set in. How could anyone have found it? I'd told no one my exact coordinates. I tried to stay rational. Maybe I'd made a mistake marking the GPS point. Maybe a bear had somehow managed it. I decided to push on towards the next cache location, 2 days hike away, rationing my remaining snacks carefully. But as I hiked, the paranoia grew. Every rustle in the bushes, every shadow seemed to hold a hidden observer. I started noticing small, unsettling things. A boot print near a stream that wasn't mine. A freshly broken branch across the trail that hadn't been there on my way up. It felt like I was being followed, herded. The nights were the worst. I'd set up my tent well off the trail trying to hide, but sleep was impossible. I kept hearing faint sounds, footsteps circling my camp just beyond the firelight, a twig snapping, or was it just my frayed nerves, the wilderness playing tricks on a starving man? On the morning of day 10, exhausted and running on fumes, I finally reached the location of my third cache. Relief washed over me as I saw the familiar pile of rocks. I dropped my pack and started digging frantically. My shovel hit plastic, thank God. I pulled the bucket out and it was empty. Not just empty. The lid had been carefully pried off, all the food removed, and replaced with a single, smooth river stone. That's when I knew. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't an animal. Someone had deliberately found and emptied both my caches. Someone knew my route, knew my locations, and was systematically stripping me of my supplies, miles from civilization. They weren't just stealing my food, they were trapping me out here. I looked around wildly, screaming into the empty forest, "What do you want?" Only the wind answered. As I stood there, utterly defeated, I noticed something carved into the bark of a nearby pine tree. It was a crude symbol, a circle with an X through it. A marker? A warning? As I stared at it, a glint of sunlight caught my eye, reflecting off something high in the branches above the carving. It was a small trail cam, strapped to the tree, its dark lens pointed directly at me. I didn't wait to see who came to collect the footage. I left the empty bucket, left the trail, and started bushwhacking downhill, following a stream, hoping it would lead me towards a road, any road. It took me another agonizing day and night, surviving on the last of my emergency rations, before I stumbled onto a logging track and flagged down a bewildered truck driver. I told the rangers my story. They investigated, but found nothing. No sign of the empty caches, no trail cam, no tracks. It was as if the forest had swallowed the evidence. Who emptied my caches? How did they know my precise hidden locations? Were they watching me on that camera the whole time? I never got any answers. All I know is that someone played a terrifying game with me deep in the Sierra Nevada wilderness, using my own careful planning against me. They didn't need to attack me directly. They just took away my lifeline and waited for the mountains to do the rest. I haven't been back to the deep woods since. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one with claws, but the one who knows exactly where you're going to be.
Deep in the Oregon wilderness, miles from any signal, our radios picked up voices. They weren't asking for help. They were planning. My friend Dave and I spent the October of 2020 working a contract job maintaining remote weather stations deep in the Mount Hood National Forest, Oregon. It was tough work, hiking heavy equipment miles into the backcountry, often spending days completely isolated. Our only communication with the outside world, or each other when we split up, was via powerful two-way radios. We were 10 days into a particularly remote assignment, setting up a new station on a high, wind-swept ridge. The silence up there was absolute, broken only by the wind and the crackle of our radios. That's when the chatter started. Faint at first, like static trying to form words buried under the hiss. We switched channels, thinking it was interference, but it followed us. As days went by, the voices grew clearer, but never fully intelligible. Snippets of conversation, mostly mundane, talk of weather, of supplies, but the tone felt wrong. It was flat, emotionless, yet somehow watchful. We also started finding signs that we weren't alone. Old fire pits where none should be. Strange carvings on trees. Once near a stream, Dave found a small, handmade wooden doll, crudely carved and unsettlingly detailed. We were miles from any designated trail or campsite. No one had any business being out here. One afternoon, while checking a perimeter sensor, I stumbled upon it. A small, hidden campsite tucked into a dense thicket. There was a low, dirty tarp shelter, a cold fire pit, and a battered duffel bag. Against my better judgment, I opened the bag. Inside were coils of rope, several rolls of duct tape, a stack of missing person flyers, mostly children, and a worn Polaroid camera. My blood ran cold. I dropped the bag and backed away slowly, calling Dave on the radio, my voice trembling. "Dave, get over here, now. We need to leave." Dave arrived minutes later, rifle in hand. I showed him the contents of the bag. He didn't need convincing. We agreed to pack up immediately and hike out first thing in the morning. As we sat nervously in our small base camp tent that night, the radio crackled to life again. This time, the voices were crystal clear. 2 men. "Just wait for dark. They won't expect it then. Make sure the ropes are tight this time." My heart stopped. They weren't just random voices. They were here. They knew about us, and they were planning something for tonight. Suddenly, Dave grabbed his radio. "Who is this?" he yelled into the mic. "What do you want?" The radio went dead silent. The abruptness was terrifying. We sat there in the oppressive quiet, straining our ears. Then came a soft crunch of gravel just outside the tent. Then another. Someone was circling us. Dave slowly reached for his rifle. I grabbed my largest maglite. The tent zipper moved. A dark shape began to push its way inside. Dave lunged forward, shoving the rifle barrel into the figure's chest, yelling, "Get out!" The figure stumbled back. Another shape lunged from the side, tackling Dave to the ground. I swung the heavy flashlight, hitting the second attacker hard across the head. He crumpled. The first man scrambled back out of the tent. I
could hear them crashing away through the underbrush. We didn't sleep. We packed our essential gear in minutes, leaving the tent and heavy equipment behind, and started hiking out in the pitch blackness, radios off, moving as fast and silently as we could. We didn't stop until we hit the main logging road hours later at dawn. We reported everything to the sheriff's department. They sent a team up later that week. The hidden campsite was gone. Our base camp tent was slashed to ribbons, the equipment destroyed. But they found no trace of the men, the duffel bag, or the camera. No missing persons reported in the area matched the flyers. No explanation was ever found. Were they kidnappers? Something worse? Why target us? We never went back. Sometimes I still hear that dead, flat voice from the radio in my nightmares, talking about tight ropes. The deep woods keep their secrets, and sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't the silence, but the voices hiding within it.